So I did Hunchback of Notre Dame last week in Fairfield, Iowa. Turns out to be this little town of 10,000 people. Have you ever heard of Fairfield, Iowa?
No.
So there's a university there called Maharishi University. They have more ethnic restaurants per head than San Francisco.
Wow.
Yeah, there are 40 different restaurants
In Iowa.
in a small town of 10,000 people in Iowa.
Why not?
Yeah, it was really cool. I loved it.
That's crazy.
I find it amazing. Like somebody's going to drive through Fairfield, Iowa one day and just let's stop and eat here.
Right.
Yeah, and there's Turkish and Indian. I think there was a Moroccan restaurant. I mean, they've got all of this different stuff going on. So that was kind of cool.
Dang.
So you were how long were you? Was it one off?
Yeah, it was just a gig. They launched a silent movie. Actually, they have 4 organ events a year in there. And here's the extraordinary thing: they've got this purpose-built auditorium, Fairfield's Arts and Convention Centre. Probably seats about 300, 400 people. But I mean, it is set up. They have big shows come through there and big names and all sorts of cool stuff. And they installed a pipe organ up in there, which they rescued from the former university when the chapel closed. Okay. And so these old geezers, I'll call them, with a bit of electrical skill and a bit of fanaticism about the pipe organ, took it out of the old building and installed it in the convention centre there.
How's that?
Wow.
Well, like in the Victory, there's those grills on the side. It's kind of like that, except you can actually see the pipes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
so
cool.
they put up a big screen, and then they hired me to come in and do the soundtrack to Hunchback of Notre Dame.
That's awesome.
Nice.
Yeah, it was really cool.
That's awesome.
I mean, I've been recording and just a test, and so these are good stories. So I'll keep those in there. But just so that you know that we're recording, I like to let people know that we're actually recording. But so how does that compare with like the organ you usually use here?
Oh, utterly different. Yeah, made in 1960 by the Moeller Company, who were in Hagerstown, Maryland. Mm-hmm. So it's a 1960s Moeller, which if you're in the organ world, you know what that means.
Yeah.
It means it's kind of limited. It looks really impressive, but it's kind of limited in other ways. And the instrument doesn't have the directness between the key that I play and that I touch and an actual mechanical movement. So it's more sort of electrics going up to where the air and the pipes are. Huh. So it's just a different kind of concept of design.
And
with knowing nothing about it, I love organ music, especially it's from my sports background. Ballpark organ music is awesome.
Does it take you back like?
I think it just sounds good.
You're like this is where I want to be.
Aesthetic to the ear.
Sure.
Well, there's something about, I think, the pipe organ. It moves air and it moves significant quantities of air. Some of those big pipes are, the size of this table, and the mouth of them and the envelope of air, just the sheer volume, and then the pipes are vibrating. I mean, you feel it in your body.
Sure.
Yeah.
On some of the big pipes. So
that's cool. Our buddy Josh Petrowski moves a lot of air, so we know what you're talking about.
Yes. Big cat. Well, Robert, thank you for coming over again. It's been too long.
It's awesome.
Like a year, right, or so, about this time.
Actually, maybe 2. Or maybe it was last year.
Was Nosferatu? Was that last year?
Yeah, so that would have been last year.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm blanking on what the other one was because I saw Nosferatu last year, but I didn't see the other one.
I did the Golem last year,
okay.
which was it turned out to be really fun. Yeah. I managed to get more kind of contemporary tunes and musical illusions in that movie than any others I've ever done.
Really?
Yeah, because there was just so much cool imagery and sort of little scenes where you can just sort of throw something in there and make a connection. So
that's cool. And for those who hadn't heard, but you're over at First Presbyterian downtown, right across the street from Penny Lane.
That's right. If you know where Penny Lane is, you can find First
Mulberry and
Second to Mulberry,
right? Yeah. And this is you do this. It's just the one time a year right now, right?
At the moment, yeah. I'm thinking that I'd like to do a movie in the spring, maybe something around Lent and Easter time in there. There's a really beautiful movie called Joan of Arc, which is just stunning cinematography. If you've come across it, then the acting is incredible, and that would be really good to do around Eastertide, I think. So before it gets sort of too late in the evenings, we don't have shades that we can pull down on our 30-40 foot tall Gothic windows.
Makes it a bit difficult to watch them.
Yeah. So we have to wait till it gets dark. So here in October, I start those movies about 7 p.m. and go from there.
Yeah. I was telling Cory before you got here that I've seen it. Like the first one I saw was I think 2 years ago when you did Phantom of the Opera.
Yep.
Yeah, but you've been doing this more than that, right?
Yeah, I think this is my 7th year actually.
Wow. Oh wow.
This. Yeah.
That's some stuff. And this year, it's a big one, Metropolis.
Yeah, very big.
Yeah, very big. So our mutual friend, Kate McKinney, she kept saying to me, "You've got to do Metropolis. You've got to do Metropolis."
Yeah.
And I was like, and I remember seeing it, maybe I was a teenager, maybe I was 13 or 14, and for some reason back then on the BBC, they would show in the afternoons when there wasn't much going on, old black and white movies. And Metropolis came on, and I remember just not understanding anything about it and being a little bit bored, and because there are moments where it just talking about the movie itself, where there's an awful lot going on all of a sudden, and then there are moments where there's just nothing sort of happening, and there'll be a sort of fixed facial shot and somebody looking anguished for quite a long time, and it's sort of left to your mind's imagination to fill in what they might be thinking, whereas today they would just tell you.
Right.
I remember being a little confused at one point. I don't want to give part of the movie away, but there's like a very climactic moment, and I'm sort of confused as to which way they've gone on. I don't know how to word it without spoiling, but we can edit it out. But there's at one point they're trying to get someone, and I'm watching it thinking they've gotten the wrong one.
Oh yeah, yeah, right at the end, yeah.
So I remember I was sitting here thinking, okay, this is So if you're not grasping on tone or whatever, it's
exactly.
If
you're not paying quite close attention, So I mean, it's got this movie has everything in it. It's got incredible cinematography. It's got cubist architecture, a whole bunch of Art Deco visuals going on. It's got cases of mistaken identity.
Yeah,
it's got upstairs, downstairs tensions between, the bourgeoisie and the proletariat, if you want to use those terms. It's got, sort of personal drama. It's got father-son interactions. It's got the crazy professor. There's the first depiction in film of a robot.
They don't even call it a robot. They call it a machine man.
Machine man, and it was a woman.
Awesome. Yeah,
it's a woman. Yeah. And I was just reading today on the old Wikipedia that she was actually in that costume.
Oh, wow.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and it had a little bit of movement. It was a kind of proto-wood plastic thing they put her in. And in fact, when she would walk around in it, it actually cut her and bruised her to actually move in it.
Oh, man.
And you can kind of see that. It's really... It looks painful to be in there.
Yeah.
What's neat to me is it's a 90-year-old movie that's set 100 years in the future. So it's set 10 years from now, 9 years from now.
Right.
And it's incredibly, with what's going on currently in the world, it's amazing how they're essentially talking about some of the same things we're currently talking about. It's unbelievably topical for a movie that's 90 years old.
It was the most expensive movie made at the time, from what I read, and...
I believe it. So it was made in between 1925 and 1926, and so it's got a date of 1927 on it. And the original budget was for 1.5 million Reichmarks, because it was filmed during the Weimar period between the wars in Germany, and it ended up costing 5.1. It took them a year to film it, and the script changed a number of times, and there were he was such a perfectionist in what he wanted in terms of visuals and the acting and how it went, and there are incredible numbers of extras all running around, and you'll see maybe 100 people all walking in step and moving around, and the special effects are quite stunning.
I also read that, not that I'm dumping my Wikipedia knowledge, not Wikipedia where I got this, but there was it's inspired, I guess C-3PO was inspired from this movie.
Oh yeah, sure.
And The Matrix has a lot of inspiration from that movie. And
Did you see that?
What was the other one? Oh, the Tim Burton Batman movies. He apparently was inspired by that as well.
Well, and similarly, you can look at the cityscapes in things like The Fifth Element and the Star Wars movies, and just the shape of the buildings and how they're used. There's also a lot of biblical stories in there as well, and a lot of biblical imagery.
Babel.
Yeah, there's the Tower of Babel. There's the female character when she's down in the catacombs. She's clearly preaching to the underdog. And in fact, there are crosses on the side.
Yep.
I mean, there's a lot of tie-in with many stories.
That's crazy. So
why Metropolis?
Yeah, why? Other than Kate said to do it, but then you've got to still have an interest, right?
Oh yeah, sure. Well,
you don't just do whatever Kate says, right?
I'm kind of game. No, I don't. I'm kind of game for just about anything at once. And as I say, I had seen it as a kid, so I knew that it was. Right. I knew that it was unusual and very interesting. But when somebody comes to you with a great passion and they say, "Really, please check this out," and because you're going to find it really interesting, and I think it'll work really, really well on the pipe organ and in the setting that we have. So it's if you do the full one, it's really long. It's really long.
Oh, that was one of my questions. Which version? Because I saw that it was like they've got 3 or 4 at least different lengths.
Indeed, the original version is 2.5 hours long, and there's a great temptation for me to do that because it has everything in it.
Sure. Yeah.
So I've watched parts of. Well, I've watched the whole of the full one, and then I've watched parts of various other ones, sort of listening to the music that they have a little bit. Mm-hmm. And then also seeing what's in and what's out. And the ones that make those cuts definitely are missing quite a lot of what's going on. So some opening scenes that just set the scene are gone. They're taken out.
Okay.
Yeah, it seems like a story that you wouldn't want to miss a piece of any of it. Or at some point there's going to be a character that is not well explained that now has a very large role.
Right.
Right. So for example, in one of the first issues of it in the US, the main motivation, the fact that the crazy scientist guy was dating a woman called Hell.
Yeah.
And it turns out that the ruler of the city then ends up marrying her and giving birth to the main protagonist. Freda. You'd imagine that would be really vital knowledge to have, but it's completely excised.
Yeah, and even in the longer version, which is I think the only one I've seen, it takes you a minute at first to realize that he had. Well, I mean, because and some of that's just they made the movie that way, but it takes you a minute to realize. Oh, so he was in love with that person. You know, if it's one of those, if you sneezed at that point where they insinuated that, then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, now I see why there's a little.
Yeah, and then this
go back and forth there.
Yeah, and then the tension between the two keeps reappearing. There's times where one plots against the other, and then the other one plots back, and then in one of the final sort of it's rather like Pirates of the Caribbean. There's lots of running around and fight scenes.
Yeah,
particularly towards the end. Yeah, that's what I kept thinking. Well, everybody's just borrowed from this movie.
And Johnny Depp's in it.
Yeah, that's right. Well, Johnny Depp's not in it, but There's a lot going on there, and again, if you've excised that, if you've cut it out, it doesn't make as much sense.
Right now, are you going to show the original German and just hope people can understand it, or are you going to be nice to people? And
the restored version that I have has English intertitles.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Intertitles was the word I was looking for and could not find it.
Yeah, that's where a person carries on, or there's a lot of talking going on, and they'll sort of distill it down, and they'll show a blank frame with the text on it. Yeah. It always, as the improviser, it kind of leaves me like, oh, okay, well, what am I going to do during this one? Right. Because there's maybe not so much action, but maybe there's music which I can play under there, which reinforces the intertitle, or actually can shape it in another way and relate it musically to the person being referred to or to the action being referred to.
So now you're creating all of this. Yeah, all the music that you're playing, you're creating. You're not going from a sheet that says when you play Metropolis, you do this. This is all you.
Well, right. Yeah. So I'm going to improvise. I'm going to make up a soundtrack on the spot. And
that's amazing.
Oh, thanks.
I mean, I know that you do that, but I mean, do you realize that's unbelievable?
Well, thanks. Yeah. Well, it's one of my loves and passions.
Sure,
is to make spontaneous music in the moment. Jazz musicians follow very fixed periods of time, and may have to allow them to play with other people. They have a very clear framework in which they're going to improvise and whose turn it is, and so on and so forth. When doing a movie, I'm following the movie. So I see my job as to underpin it and provide a an emotion or a sense of the pathos of the scene in sound.
Do you feel like you have to know the movie first?
Absolutely.
So you wouldn't be able to do this on a first watch?
No.
You sort of have to study it, then you're ready to...
Right, yeah. So if I've never seen the movie...
So you're not that good that you can just go in the first time?
Well,
I'm kidding.
Yeah, that I can't read the director's mind before they made the movie.
No. Right. No, that's still... I find that fascinating.
Yeah, how many times do you have to sit through a movie and... pick it up?
That's a great question. So at the moment, I'm watching Metropolis and Jekyll and Hyde, sort of as I can here and there. You know, I have a family and a job and all this sort of stuff. So I'm watching, say, half an hour here, half an hour there, and I seem to have a pretty good visual memory of what's going to come next in terms of scenery and so then what I begin to do is I will. Particularly leading up to the performance, I will watch it at least twice in the 2 days prior. So I've really got the sense of the flow of the movie, how it all fits together, and then I'm also kind of working in the background. There's a number of philosophies of what you can do in terms of producing a soundtrack like this. One way is you can actually go back and there is an original soundtrack,
Right?
And it's a post-Wagnerian. Large symphonic. It's like listening to a Strauss tone poem.
Yeah, it sounded like something they would do at the Philharmonic, like what they did with Godfather and Indiana Jones.
Yeah, exactly. It's very similar. And in 1925 and 6, in fact, when they were making the movie, they had elements of the soundtrack. And I was reading today that they would actually have somebody playing the soundtrack on the piano. Before they'd recorded it, and then that would help them do the scene. So there's a lot of me that says, maybe I should be really trying to work to, quote, recreate that soundtrack from the full orchestra onto the pipe organ. The thing with this movie is that it's been done so many times in so many different ways. I can see that there are at least a dozen different soundtracks have been created for it.
Yeah, that's one. Did you see the 1984 one? Because that made me... I want to seek that out. There was
Freddie Mercury,
Loverboy, and Adam Ant.
And all these people. Yeah. Well, and that is actually the one that most people today kind of have in the back of their mind when they think of Metropolis, is that particular soundtrack. Okay. I'm not going to do any of those things.
Come on.
I think there may well be some elements of Wagnerian development of themes and melody. What I try to do is I try to assign each person each character or each place a theme, an idea, a musical shape, and then during the course of the movie, that shape and that theme interacts with the others and changes and morphs as that character morphs and changes. When they're asleep, you can play it slowly. And some of the things which I do are very, very simplistic, and then some are sort of more adventurous and take a bit more sort of intellectual work and knowledge. So anyway, I will run through the whole movie in one sitting before I do it, maybe the morning of. Yeah. And then I'll go home and take a nap
Jeez.
before coming back.
Cory, when you watched it, was there a soundtrack on it? Or okay.
Yeah, so, it was probably the original, I'm guessing.
Yeah. Because it would just be weird to sit there without anything.
That's what I've just done. I've just watched the whole thing with no sound at all. Yeah. So
I guess because you don't really want to be influenced.
Exactly. Yeah. Like, let me find my own way and ideas of depict. I mean, this.
Like when you see the worker world, you want to know what that feels like in your head. That sound that you find.
Exactly. So I think
and how that differs from the Garden of the Suns or whatever, or the Club of the Suns.
The Club of the Suns, I think it's called. Yeah, where they all hang out and.
Interesting. That's neat. That's a neat approach. I guess in my head, I would think, okay, I need to figure out what they've done and figure out how that fits to what I would like to do. But I guess. If you want to truly be unique.
Well, I feel that's what every film score composer does. And they sit down with the score and with the timing and they work out their melodies and orchestration. I mean, think of what John Williams does with a Star Wars movie. He's got the movie in front of him, and so then he writes the music. But he's got time to compose it and fiddle with it and change it and mess with it. Whereas if I've learned the movie properly, I just do it all in one go. It's like composing at 100,000 miles an hour, and you can't change anything once you've done it. But also, I'm not going to record it. It's just going to exist in the moment, and hopefully the people who come along are swept up in it. And what I've found in talking to people afterwards is that for about 5 minutes at the beginning of the movie, they're aware that there is another human being in the room creating this sound on the pipe organ, and it's just sort of enveloping them from behind.
Yeah.
And then after that, it just becomes
watching a movie,
an experience. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Is this so? You're doing Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde as well, and they seem like very different styles of movies. Mm-hmm. So with the sound of the organ, was that a concern that maybe will this work with Metropolis, or you're just like, yeah, it works with every movie? Calm down. That kind of thing. Yeah,
it's although it's not a big organ, it's a really great organ, and that down there at First Prayers, and it has so much variety of colours, even within one colour. So you draw on one sound, say the sound of a flute, and the sound of one flute can carry you for a long time. You don't bore or tire of that sound. So that's where the artistry that's gone into the instrument really helps me as a performer to have those long periods of time, and also, as you say, play contrasting movies. And by the way, on Sunday morning, I'll get up and play church.
Right.
It does hymns,
so
and
it's different.
It's going to accompany the choir. It's gonna do all of those things, and that's what a really great instrument can do, really convincingly.
And no, this is when. So for people listening, it's when.
Oh, okay. So Friday night, the 13th of October. Friday the 13th of October will be Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde at 7:00. And then on Saturday at 7:00 will be Metropolis on the 14th. Normally in the past, I've done a new movie first and then sort of fallen back into one I've already done, which is a much easier process on the Saturday night. But somebody pointed out to me, well, Metropolis is such a great movie that you may be drawing from more than just Evansville and the tri-state area.
Sure,
There may be people who want to come from Nashville and Indianapolis and Louisville and St. Louis and from the surrounding area to come and experience this, to come and witness this, to come and hear this. So I've swapped them around. So Metropolis is on Saturday night to enable a bit more regional pull.
Yep. And this is to proceeds will go towards the youth choir. Is that?
Yeah, basically. So entry is free. Anybody can come and have a go. But we do ask for donations. It's kind of like a free will offering. If you got $5, $10, or $20, that's great. And that money goes to help young people in the church go to summer music camps. So it's definitely connected with music. The children, by the way, come into the church 3 days a week, including Sundays, and they rehearse with me. I was a chorister at Westminster Abbey in London as a kid.
Wow.
So it's kind of a little bit of that experience. Yeah. They come in on Tuesdays and they rehearse with me again on Thursdays, and they sing with the adults, and then they sing every Sunday morning too. So it's a pretty heavy commitment. And then in the summer, they go to various music camps around the country, and so the money helps to get there and pay registration fees and help travel and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, Metropolis ranked 108 on IMDb all time.
Top 250.
Yes,
so it's the
and
people rankings.
141 Flick Chart overall.
Nice.
It's a pretty big deal.
And I think Ebert has it in his top 25 or top 10 movies.
So that's it's for a 90-year-old movie.
A lot of pressure.
It's a lot. Yeah, don't screw this up.
Well, the movie is what the movie is. I'm only worried about the soundtrack.
I'm more concerned that you're going up against Freddie Mercury.
Well,
tough.
I mean, here's an extraordinary musician. Now, I'm not sure that he was composing something special for it. I think it's non-original songs which have been tacked on into it.
Oh, well, so he's not. I get you. He's not in your league. I know what you're saying.
No, I'm just saying that thank you, Cory. I'm just saying that the process is a little bit different.
Yeah, okay.
Right.
Freddie Mercury's music is incredible, and it's being put to a different use than maybe he had in mind for it at the beginning. As my music would not be what the composer who originally wrote the score for the movie would be, but mine will be a living adaptation, let's say, rather than trying to recreate something of exactly that era.
So from how long have you been preparing for this? So from when you knew Metropolis to now, how long has that process been?
Well, it's ongoing. I would say in the last 2 weeks, I've sort of really, really knuckled down.
And you announced when? When did you decide Metropolis?
A year ago.
Okay, so then you sat on it, and you're going to go a full, hard month at it.
That's right.
Wow.
That's right. And then it's really in the days and hours preceding when the bulk of the work gets done, because that inspiration.
Sure.
Hopefully, I'm having a really good day.
Right.
If I'm playing Bach and I'm having a bad day, Bach is still really good.
Mm-hmm.
But if I'm improvising and I have a bad day, you can't really sort of blame it on anybody else, can you? So that's where I kind of channel myself into kind of being in the moment to do that for that 160-minute period.
Wow.
Sure.
150-minute period.
Yeah.
And then similarly the night before with Jekyll and Hyde. Having done that before, I'll do slightly less, but I'll certainly watch it 2 or 3 times that week.
And what year was the Jekyll and Hyde one?
1920.
I know we kind of ignored a little bit of that, but
John Barrymore.
I feel like a lot of people already know Jekyll and Hyde, and they're like, okay, I'm in on that. So Metropolis is one of those things where I've always heard of Metropolis, but I never had any clue what it was until you were going to play it. So.
When you come and see it,
Yeah.
and you see the parallels with what people have done since. So, for example, I was really, really struck by there's a hover car. Well, it seems like a hover car that comes down these angled roads way up in the roof lines of these skyscrapers. And he's even gone to the extent of having lights come on to light the path as you go down. I mean, that's technology that we're just sorting out now.
Yeah.
To have, lights come on when you go into a room, or lights come on when cars go down, or brightening up. And here they were in 1925 actually creating it on screen.
There was a scene where Fritter's father, who at one point is sort of spying on what's going down in the workers' area, and actually goes to this machine and turns this video on.
That's right.
Where he's watching. And this is 1927.
Well, he has a video conference.
Yeah.
He has a video conference with the character Grot, the head worker who kind of runs all the machines. Yeah. And I was watching that again. I was
MR2 or so. It was like this. They go to this video camera and he's talking to.
Yeah. Now they're both holding phones, but they're also both looking at screens. It's kind of like it was 20 years ago. Or when I call my parents on Skype, the sound part doesn't work because it's to the UK. But so we use the phones and then...
Wow. Amazing. Yeah. It's amazing how more modern it does feel to watch it. Seems like it's from the 50s instead of the 20s.
Yes, indeed. And then there are, again, some of the opening scenes when they're just sort of showing the cityscape, where there are vehicles and people and pedestrians and planes flying in the buildings. Yeah. I mean, it's and following certain part. I mean, it's really quite stunning.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, you said it doesn't cost, so there's no pre-tickets or anything, but get there early because there's going to be a crowd.
Yeah, if you want a premium seat, get there in good time. Yeah.
Okay.
And we'll be delighted to see you.
Cool. Awesome. Do you have anything further? Are you good? Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you, Robert. Appreciate
You're really
you
welcome.
over.
It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah.
All right. Cool. Good to meet you.
Yeah, good to see you too.
All right.
Good job, everybody.